Again to introduce Julie Wise, Director of Elections for King County, and the incomparable Kate Starbird, co-founder of the Center for an Informed Public and professor of human-centered design and engineering.
Director Wise, thank you so much for being here today. We, through all this work Stephen described a little bit and the work we've been doing since 2020, we have developed a real appreciation for the work that election administrators and their staff do to support people's abilities to participate in elections and understand what's happening. And so as we get started here, I'd love to take kind of a step back and ask you from maybe a 30,000-foot view of your sort of operations. How do you see your operations generally in King County in particular?
It's a great place to start, right? What do we do?
Yeah.
So at King County Elections, we've got a team of 80 full-time permanent employees. And for an election that's a federal or presidential, we're going to hire some 800 temporary workers. We've got 1.4 million registered voters, and we're the owners of the entire election process. So from voter registration to ensuring that the voter gets the right ballot mailed out, to us doing signature verification and processing that ballot back at our headquarters, we're doing all of that. Voters, pamphlets, all of the things. Now, we're doing about 4 elections every single year, and that's really sort of the core operations of what we're doing at King County Elections.
Amazing. All right, so Stephen mentioned this a little bit in his talk around the Supreme Court decision on June 29, Watson versus the Republican National Committee. You said after that decision that this is a relief not only for us, but for our voters, and will help make sure that thousands of voters are able to have their ballots counted in this November's midterms and future elections. Can you explain what this ruling means for voters in King County and Washington State more broadly?
Yeah, the short answer is it's voting as usual for voters and business as usual for election administrators. Sort of the longer response is that our Washington State long-standing rules around ballots that are postmarked by Election Day or before, but are received after Election Day, can still be counted. And here in Washington State, for a general election, that's 3 weeks after Election Day. And that really is to account for the time that it can take in mail processing for all of our voters, including our military and overseas voters, or out-of-state voters, or out-of-country voters, right? So it's really, we celebrated that win. That is a big win for us and for our voters, because what we see, absolutely, that had the potential to disenfranchise, from the data that we look at, 20 to 30,000 voters that get it in an on-time postmark, but ballot just simply comes in usually the day after or that Thursday after Election Day. And so this is a huge win for us to make sure that our voters' voices are heard.
Yeah, and we're worried about that from our end on the information side, because the more uncertainty, the more change, the more confusion, that's going to generate more rumors, more people that are upset, even if their votes are counted, they're not sure about it. And so just like all of that potential uncertainty was something that was concerning us as well. All right, so previous public opinion polling in our state has shown that there's generally a high level of trust in Washington's vote-by-mail system. Now, despite the Supreme Court's recent ruling upholding these practices, do you have any lingering concerns about the public's trust in our state's vote-by-mail system?
Of course. I mean, the biggest threat to election isn't voter fraud. It's rumors. And because that really is what's going to impact and influence our voters participating in the democracy, right? And so that is actually, our biggest concern. Listen, I've been around election administration for 26 years. So I've seen some things in the early 2000s that we're not going to talk about today. And when you lose that credibility and that reputation, one, it's hurtful. It is hurtful, as we are your neighbors. We're in the grocery store with you. We're at PTA with you. And so I think that part of it, these are dedicated, trained election administrators that take their jobs very seriously. So to see that sort of erosion, I think is really hard from sort of a personal perspective. But we also are concerned, again, about how does that turn people away from voting. It doesn't matter. Their voice doesn't count. It's a rigged system. Why even bother? And we all know, I think we can all agree, that democracy truly is at its finest when all voices are heard. And we need people to show up to be able to see that. I think it can be it is an unnerving and scary time right now, especially when we see hit after hit, executive order and lawsuit, litigation, especially aimed at vote by mail. But there's also a lot of hope too. King County had almost a 90% turnout in the presidential in 2020. That is some of the hugest in the entire nation. So we're on to something, right? It's about providing access, removing barriers, keeping it secure at the exact same time, that people will show up and they will engage in our elections. And so I think that that's really hopeful. And another thing on the hopeful note is that the team of election administrators that are civil servants that are dedicated to this work because they are passionate about their neighbors and their community. They want to help one another. They follow the laws. They've really been through it the last few years. And what I remind them is that they ran a presidential election in the midst of a global pandemic. And we saw an 87% turnout. And 300,000 some voters were turning ballots at drop boxes on a single day. So I think there's also a lot of hope there.
That's fantastic. All right, so in 2024, our research team here at UW tracked some online rumors that shared concerns about perceived voter registration anomalies at certain addresses in Seattle. Stephen mentioned this in his talk as well. In one case, the address was a mailbox store next to a marina where people living aboard their boats collected their mail, including their ballots from King County elections. With the California primary election in June, we saw a similar claim involving a UPS store in San Diego. This sort of one-address many voter registrations claim is the type of election rumor we see year after year, an anomaly that has an explanation. Can you explain what Washington state election law says about multiple voter registrations at a place like a mailbox store or a homeless shelter?
Every day I wake up and I'm so thankful that I run elections in Washington state. And this is a prime example why. Because we have laws like this on the book that account for that not everyone has a stable home. So you can have a non-traditional address to be able to get registered at, but you do have to provide a residential address. And that could be a cross street as well. So that we make sure that we're getting the right ballot for you that has the right races on it for you to be eligible to vote. And then you can have your ballot mailed wherever you want. And that can be at a private mailbox location, or it can be at the United States Postal Service's P.O. boxes, or that can be to your actual residence. So while it can maybe on the face or the surface of it look sort of, head tilting kind of odd that there's all these ballots being delivered to a private mailbox, I live out in Enumclaw, actually out towards Ravensdale, where we don't have traditional mailboxes that are homes. So we all get our mail at the PMB, and that's where we're picking up our ballots. So this is, I think, again, a really great rumor to bust, which is that, again, got to have a residential address to vote here in Washington state. We account for that you might not have a traditional address. You provide a cross street or maybe a shelter, and then you can get your ballot at a shelter, a PMB, or a P.O. box.
It's just another example of things that look suspicious if you don't know how anything works. But once you know how things work, you can understand that this is actually not a problem. It's such a hard thing for you to preemptively debunk all of those different things. But at a certain point, we're learning there's patterns to that, and so maybe it'll get easier as time goes on to be able to identify some of these things in advance to help people just understand that no, it's not as suspicious as it looks. So if you look at our bingo card, which we shared earlier, you'll see a square reserved for ballots in a dumpster. Now that's not on every card, but it's on many cards. We kind of rigged them that way. The bingo cards are rigged, unlike the elections. This is a common type of voter fraud claim that our team has seen over the years. A variant would be ballots found in a ditch. For example, in 2020, a bunch of ballots were discovered in a dumpster in Sonoma County and in California, and photos quickly spread online. Now, as it turns out, the county elections office in that case had discarded old ballots from a previous election following the established protocol, which tends to happen every year, I think, in September. In California, due to the timing of when they recycle old ballots. But similar rumors spread in slightly different ways. This is a common rumor, especially in mail-in voting states. So, Director Wise, not too long ago, your office responded to claims about ballots found at a dumpster in Renton, claims that spread quickly online and generated numerous local and national headlines. Now, I've been really curious about this question because I kind of wrote about this at the time, but I never knew how it all resolved. Can you help explain what happened in that case?
Yeah, for those of you that maybe didn't see the actual video, there was a social media video posted on late Thursday night in April from the chair of the state Republican Party, as well as he's a sitting state representative. And he posts a video, sort of dramatic effect with a pile of ballots in front of him and talking about the potential for voter fraud opportunity as these ballots are located in a strip mall in Renton in an alleyway by a dumpster. And this is one where I think it's important for us with those rumors, right? Is to check sort of the source, and also, there is an ask for campaign donations in that video as well. So I think looking at sort of what the actual call is. So I immediately, when I saw the video, I immediately contacted the prosecuting attorney's office. And then, of course, we worked with the Renton Police, the FBI, the United States Postal Service, the United States Postal Inspection Services. So lots of folks were involved to really investigate what happened here. And at the end of the day, these were ballots for about 56 voters that simply didn't pick up their mail at the PMB, and they were for past elections. So they were from 2022 to 2025 past elections that voters just didn't pick up their mail at a PMB. And it's unfortunate, I think, that the owner discarded the ballots by the box. What it sounds like to us is that there was a new owner of the PMB and they were cleaning up and they saw this box. And so they stuck it out by the dumpster, in the dumpster, somewhere a dumpster. And so really, I think what's really important for folks is that the safeguards for your elections and vote by mail is on the back end of the process. So while it's certainly disconcerting to see a pile or a stack of ballots, you can't do anything with them. Because when your ballot makes it back to the elections office, we're going to verify that it's for that election, that you haven't returned another ballot, that your signature matches the signature on your voter registration record, and then count your ballot. So I think it's really important for folks to recognize that if you see it in a ditch or any of that. The other point is that at no point was the right people contacted. And that would be the Department of Elections, which happens to live just down the street from that strip mall. And the ballots were not even turned over to authorities when the authorities asked for them. So again, if we really want to get to the root of what was going on there, I think we would have been giving them to King County Elections. I know him personally. I've given him a tour of my office, and he has my cell phone number, and we were never contacted. And I think that's unfortunate. So the story that wanted to be told was ultimately going to be told regardless.
That's one of the things we also see is like there's these emergent rumors where people are actually confused. They don't know what's going on. They're trying to figure things out. And then those get strategically exploited, and that uncertainty gets strategically exploited for some kind of political purpose. And that's what often makes it go viral, because people are interested in it, because it serves some other purpose. If they were just trying to get at the root of that confusion and resolve that, there would have been a quick resolution. Another thing is that that one fits our model of like how election rumors mislead very closely. They've got this falsely attributed intent, like something did happen. Those ballots were like something went a little bit wrong. The ballots were there and they shouldn't have been, and they should have been discarded in that way. But it didn't have anything to do with trying to change the results of an election. There were remedies that were omitted in the rumor, like the remedies are there. They would have been, there wasn't going to have an impact, right? So we can see, but it's hard when as a person who's been studying this, it's hard when I first encounter one of these things. It always seems like, oh my gosh, this is so suspicious, until you begin to take it apart and say, no, we've seen this before. There's a pattern to this. And here's a way to kind of understand how and why these things are misleading and why they're spreading.
Kate, one of the things we internally, as we discussed this at the elections office, is a little bit challenging, is that individuals get to just say whatever they want. That's true. I don't.
Yeah. No, it's true.
I have to say facts, right? And facts take time.
Indeed. Yeah.
And so I've got to get the authorities together. I've got to investigate this. I have to do my due diligence. I don't just get to go on social and immediately respond. That's challenging. That's hard because you see it running away in the media. I'm always fascinated to hear what your take is on sort of that approach, because it's a hard thing to balance.
Yeah, we know that falsehoods are like halfway around the world while the truth is still like lacing up its shoes, as you were trying to do right there, right? So, and it's just this imbalance, and the systems are weighted towards falsehood spreading, right? And it's very hard, especially as election officials, to get ahead of those kinds of things. I'm not an election official. I study rumors, and so one of the things we've started to do is say we don't know yet how that resolves. I'm going to try to get a hold of the folks at the King County office and figure that out, but that's not going to be fast enough. And so I don't know whether, I don't know the ground truth yet, but I know that I've seen this one before, and I know that this is how that one resolved. And I don't think that's something that you can do, but it's something that's someone who's not an election official who studies rumors can say, no, this is a pattern. We've seen this before. We don't know how this one resolves, but we do know that similar rumors have resolved in this other kind of way in the past. And we're hopeful that can be helpful, but there's still just a disadvantage. The truth has a disadvantage in these environments.
You were helpful. You were helpful to the team for sure in that.
Well, I don't know about that.
And that Mr. Ballot.
You were helpful for me to try to figure out what is going on there. All right. So last year, Washington Secretary of State Steve Hobbs and other election officials in the state urged voters to fill out and return their ballots early, especially if they plan to return their ballots by mail. That guidance came from worries over U.S. Postal Service budget cuts and concerns of delaying postmarking of ballots. In 2026, are you advising King County voters to return ballots early and ahead of the deadline, if at all possible?
Yes, that's been a longstanding message of ours for a while now about vote early, right? Go ahead and just get your ballot in the drop box or in the mail as soon as you possibly can. And we're really encouraging voters to track their ballots. Here in King County and Pierce County, you can go on, get your ballot alerts and get a text message letting you know where it's at any step in the process. So yes, absolutely. We're encouraging voters to vote early. We have heard from the United States Postal Service that their recommendation is to get it in the mail a week before Election Day, and that we know that postmarking is not happening as quickly as it once did, and that's from the United States Postal Service as a source. So here in King County, we have 92 ballot drop boxes. That means 97% of our voters live within just a 3-mile radius of a drop box. And ahead of this general federal election, we will likely have 100 drop boxes here in King County. So really encouraging voters to use a drop box. And if you want to use the mail, go ahead and do it a week before. I'm a true election geek, so I did test out the Postal Service myself last election, and it worked beautifully.
Amazing. All right. So you talked a little bit earlier about how the Washington state process allows for some time, and we allow for time for votes to get in because of how the mail works and processing and overseas voting. But as someone who studies rumors, we know that slow vote counting is another one of the things that causes rumoring. So it extends the period of uncertainty, and it feeds that time which people can sort of try to question what's going on, and it's actually become part of some of the common conspiracy theories. It is one of our bingo card squares. Again, one that we try to get on all the cards because we know it's going to happen. So sometimes people waiting for election results will point to slow vote counting as supposed evidence of something nefarious going on behind closed doors. Now, this happened in the LA primary in June. And here in Washington, county election officials released vote tally results in batches over many days. Counting ballots and verifying the signatures on those ballots takes time because of the safeguards built into the process. How does King County elections communicate that procedural complexity to the public?
Such a great question. And it feels to me it's like we've always been the same speed. Maybe it's only noticed when there's close elections, right? When there's close races or really ones that people are very interested in the outcomes. Then all of a sudden it's like, it's this election it's like, we're always slow apparently, according to you. But no, there is a process, right? One of the things that really impacts our ability to post timely election results is when voters return their ballot. 50% of voters vote on election day or the day before. And then once that ballot comes in, it takes time to make sure that the ballot is, again, for this election, from an eligible verified voter. We've done a signature verification. We get it to the tabulation system. We review the ballot. So that process all takes time. I think that we're a little bit more fortunate than folks maybe in California because we've been vote by mail for so long. And, we really talk a lot to our friends and neighbors in Oregon about this same sort of communication around when results are going to be posted. So trying to kind of educate that, early voting is great because we can even have more meaningful results by election day is another great benefit for that. And that it's important for us to take the due diligence in accuracy around ballot counting. And so that takes time, of course. But I know it can be tricky, especially when you have those close races and people are really looking at it. But we post every single night at 4 p.m. or a little bit earlier after election day. So first posting is at 8 p.m. Generally, that 8 p.m. posting is going to have 50% of all of the ballots that are going to be counted for that election in the results. Because again, we're seeing hundreds of thousands, even in the local year election. We had 300,000 ballots returned on election day alone to ballot drop boxes. And so we're bringing all of those into our headquarters. They've got to go through the system. And so it does take time. So we're communicating that in many ways, your sort of traditional, media. And then, we do a voter education fund partnership. I'm not sure, I might be able to talk about that a little bit later, but really try to educate voters that it's not something to be alarmed about, but that it's just really part of the process.
It's not just part of the process. It's what makes the process so secure. It's all the security measures are what actually caused the counting to be so slow. And they're interpreted, they turn that on the conspiracy theorists turn that on their head. But it's actually a sign of how secure the process is. Okay, so I have a little bit of follow-up here. While King County is the largest voting jurisdiction in our state, election administrators across the state are dealing with many of the same informational dynamics about voting. What are you hearing from your peers in other counties?
I love this work because of the election administrators is a big part of it too. The people that I get to work with, not only in King County, but across the state and across this country. I would say election administrators across this country are absolutely dedicated. Some of them have trickier laws and rules that they have to work within that don't allow them to provide the level of access that we get to in Washington state, and it's really unfortunate. But what I'm hearing from folks, I read something in the Spokesman Review that I thought was really interesting from several Republican folks that run elections from Idaho to Washington and concerned about the SAVE Act. And so I think that that's really what I hear from anyone. If it's from Louisiana election administrators that I'm friends with to Asotin, is people are concerned about the constant sort of hit and us having to constantly react and figure out and navigate and do contingency plans and prepare takes us away from the focusing of our jobs. And so I think it's a bit exhausting, but this is also a group of people that are extremely dedicated to their work and I think brilliant and resilient. We're really tight in Washington state. The 39 counties are super tight. We just had our annual elections conference where we're learning from people across the country about what's happening in elections. And so we support each other really, really well. King County has more resources. And we shared that, I think, a lot with other counties to make sure that they're prepared. Our communications manager, Haley Watkins, runs a communicators group for all 39 counties across the state. We do a really good job of supporting one another, but it's a little bit exhausting, but they're also super excited. We get, this is like a mini Super Bowl to us, It's not quite the presidential, but we think we'll see 75% turnout. So we're ready to go. So it's a good vibe in that community.
I love how you talk about your numbers. You get so excited.
I do. They're good people. They're fun too.
I'm being cognizant of time because I had a 7:15 was a goal time, so I'm there. But I do want to ask you if there's anything else that you wanted to share that I haven't asked you about, or anything you wanted to follow up. I know you mentioned one thing that you said it might come up again, but I want to give you a chance to share anything else that you think voters need to know. We as folks who want to support you need to know. Legal women's voters want to know. What do you think? Yeah. What else is there?
How much? No, I'm just kidding. So I think we covered this. Vote early. Encourage your friends, family, neighbors to vote early and track their ballot. And that way they can make sure and have utmost confidence in where their ballot is in the process. And know that your election administrators are dedicated, trained professionals that are doing this work for you. Know that we've got a nationally award-winning observer program here in King County, where we have great participation from the King County Republicans, King County Democrats, and the League of Women Voters, who provide nonpartisan observer opportunities to folks. That partnership is incredibly valuable for folks to be able to come in, right? You put your ballot in a mailbox, you put it in a drop box, and then it's like magic. You want to see where the sausage is made, right? So you got to come and you got to see elections at work. And that's a really important partnership to the League of Women Voters. And we covered it, but you will see rumors going into this federal election. Be mindful of where they are coming from, and know that the best source for information in elections is going to be your county elections office. That's going to be King County Elections 296-VOTE. That's the phone number. Put it in your cell, you call us, and we're there. We will answer the phone. You can also see us on our website as well.
Awesome. I want to just thank you for all that you do, all that your staff does. I just really appreciate it. And just even from just hearing your stories here and both your passion, but also this is a hard job to do in this environment. To just really appreciate you.
I appreciate you.
Thanks. Yeah.